What's your background?
I was originally a film composer. Yeah, so I went to school for classical music and focused in film. I got out of school and was cobbling together a musician's income. I was touring in a band, working on experimental music, scoring documentaries, and a couple years out of school, I got really fortunate that a friend who had gotten into the publishing industry reached out to me and asked if I wanted to get involved in sync, and that was actually something that I had not really been exposed to before. I was actually shocked that in my 4 year fancy university degree, they didn't teach us anything about this really important way that artists can make money as composers. And if you're not a pop star, for example. And so, long story short, I got pretty lucky to have landed some significant syncs pretty early on and right away, and was really impressed with the economic outcome from that, having been a broke musician. And so that sort of set me down the path. A couple years into that, I co-founded a licensing agency with my friend and partner, and we started representing other composers as well. So in addition to myself and his work, we started representing others, and then grew it quite successfully in the entertainment space for about 10 years. And then we were just doing the job the long way so much, and we had seen so many colleagues in the space saying the similar things about their issues they were encountering, that we thought we would take a stab at doing a tech solution. And just, it was a fortuitous coincidence, we crossed paths with a development firm that had been building a music platform already, and we pitched our idea to them. This is back in 2018, and they were really excited and into it, and we combined forces, and that became the new company, Chordal. And so we were very, very lucky. It's quite unheard of as a new startup to essentially get 8 full-time engineers in-house right away. So it allowed us to build very aggressively and quickly, and something that is, quite ambitious in scope.
How has it changed from when you first started?
I would say that we've pretty much stayed the course from the beginning on our long-term roadmap, which I'm proud of. It's quite easy in startup life, in tech, to get distracted by bright, shiny objects. You have all of these buzzy things that come up, and then you have everyone telling you, hey, in order to get venture capital interest, you need to go be Web3 now, or you need to go add NFTs to your product or whatever. And I'm sure from hosting your podcast, there's so many waves of trends that come through every industry, really. But of course, in the entertainment business, there's this thing of like, well, this is the new thing, and everyone runs over here. We've done a very good job, I'd say, of staying the course. The challenges for us have been, and this is probably something we underestimated, were more around the narrative with these large enterprises, like the time it takes with a big company to change the way of thinking and methodology is extremely protracted, extremely long. It's like to get the Titanic to turn an inch to the left, you need about 5,000 miles of lead time.
Yeah.
And so that has been one of the biggest learning experiences for me, is just, I call it group therapy. It's like you have to go into these companies and sit with the teams so often and with so many different stakeholders, and sell an idea that doesn't exist yet in its fully formed way. And luckily, I think we're coming out the other side of that now. But if you would have asked me that in 2023, maybe I would have been like, oh boy, this is intense. Yeah.
What don't people know about you that you wish they did?
That's like the hardest question that I've ever been asked. I am a vintage synthesizer collector. I'm a massive nerd when it comes to music technology in general, but I'm a huge fan of vintage analog equipment. I know that's not the most exciting piece of news, but the way that I like to spend my time is tinkering with stuff. So outside of this company, I have a number of little side projects, which I will not divulge the names of, where sometimes I just produce a tape loop album and release it. Just all sorts of stuff like that. So I've got a bunch of different monikers out there on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of synths do you have, out of curiosity?
A variety of them. Actually, my favorite, I think, is this synthesizer called the Lyra 8. It's by a company called Soma Labs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a really, have you heard of this
I have. Yeah.
before? It's a really interesting piece of kit because it doesn't have any keys on it. And I'm a pianist by training. So before going into being composer, I was studying classical piano really intensely as a kid. So the thing is, with like when you know an instrument intimately, you can kind of get trapped in going to the stuff that your muscle memory intuitively does when you sit at the keyboard or pick up a guitar or whatever. And what I love about that instrument is that it's completely ephemeral. So there are no keys, no fixed pitches. You have these essentially oscillators that you touch with your fingers, and they're capacitance. So they turn on when you touch it and they stop when you release it. And you can just create these drones with your ears. And it's a beautiful instrument. Really interesting. Some of the most interesting. And the other thing that's also cool about it is it's not, there's no computer on board. So basically once you finish your session, you're never going to get that sound ever again.
Yeah. I love that.
So I love that because it forces you to kind of sit down, dive in, use your ears, use your intuition, and then you better record it because that thing's never going to happen again, you know?
Talk about the ultimate in analog, the ultimate in human creativity.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you play keyboard at all, or you're into synths too?
Yes, as a matter of fact. And I used to be, way back when it mattered, the proud owner of a Mini Moog and ARP 2500, 2600, and Odyssey. So yeah.
Oh wow, the 2500. That's a beautiful, beautiful synthesizer.
I go way back on that stuff. I wish I still had all those, but you know. So
it went
goes.
down the tide.
They paid many months' rent. Let's put it like that.
Ah, yeah.
You know what it's like.
All this time.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I actually did at one period of time, around the time back when I was still touring bands right out of college, I was in that hustle of buying a synth, and then you'd sell it, but then you realize you'd sell it to like pay rent or pay bills, and then a couple months later you'd buy it again from Craigslist.
Yeah, right. Vicious circle, yeah. Last question, Grayson. You've been through an interesting journey, so I'm sure that you've received some advice along the way, or maybe you learned something. So what would be that best piece of advice that you learned or was imparted to you?
I think specifically as it relates to sync, I think, 'cause I know you're not asking specifically in that context, but I do find it to be relevant ultimately in the big picture. It's like when you come into the industry and you look at the current opportunities, it can easily feel like they're being controlled and gatekept by a relatively small amount of people, and it's impossible to break in. And I think that's something that young artists feel very intensely before they have representation or companies representing them. And it's not that that's not true. It's just that there is a huge wealth of opportunity surrounding, like outside those walls, that you can create for yourself if you are a free-thinking, enterprising individual. And so the people that I see doing the best out there, and this is not just in music, but in general, in startups or entrepreneurialism, are the people that look at a minimal set of tools that they have, maybe just 3 tools and one contact, and they are able to turn water into wine with those very, very small set of limitations. And so I think a beautiful analog to that is like in the creative process, sometimes the best stuff happens with just a single instrument or 2 instruments when you're limited by your resources. And so pretty early on in my career, I had a mentor who was saying, it could look like a steep mountain to climb to become successful as a musician, or to have a big startup that's making tons of money or solving the world's problems, whatever. But you can't start by looking at that end result. You have to start by looking at the raw materials that are sitting in front of you and figure out your own personal motivations and competitive advantage with those raw materials, and just continue to do good work. And the cream always rises. That narrative ends up writing itself, And I think that's been one of the most compelling and important pieces of information that I received, because along the way in any journey, especially in the difficult times, especially in the times where there's like paralyzing self-doubt, or you're just getting like continually beaten down with getting told no over and over again. If you keep going back to this, look, I'm just gonna believe in the work that I'm doing and using these resources thoughtfully and intelligently, you look back and you realize you're already halfway up that hill a few years in. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's certainly been useful for me.